I'm not nervous about this talk. I am anxious because there is a convergence happening. I think we've all felt it here at Epsilon Connect. I certainly felt it yesterday. I've felt it now for weeks or months. I felt it in my own head. And I want to talk a little bit about where these words that I'm going to present today, where they come from. Almost, and don't think I'm crazy about this, because I admit some of this is going to sound crazy. A lot of this talk will sound a little crazy. But almost every morning I wake up early, often from a dream. And I am given a gift of words. It's like my brain at night when I'm asleep goes into another room. And then when it wakes me up in the morning, it says, here are some words. I'm not hearing voices, I swear, right? I'm really not. But I can't escape the feeling that I am being given the words. And I've come to trust the words. I don't think I'm a particularly wise man. Certainly, Jennifer would agree with that, I think. Probably my daughters as well. But I'm not a fool, but I don't think of myself as a particularly wise man. But there's wisdom in the words. I'm not a wise man. There is wisdom in the words. That is a mystery. That is a mystery. And I'm consumed by this mystery. I'm consumed by trying to figure out, to try to understand this room where my brain goes in dreams to retrieve words that are beyond my own wisdom. For the last month, those words have been a lot about this guy. They've been a lot about bees. Now, I've kept the bees for years, and I've written a lot about bees in some of probably my most popular notes. I want to describe what I've learned about bees and what you might not know about bees. The bee is a 3-in-1, 1-in-3 creature. The bee is a trinity. I suspect we're all familiar with two parts of this, the colony of bees and the individual bee. You may be less familiar, certainly I was before I came to know the meaning of bees, with the third part, the algorithm. The algorithm is crucial to understanding the essence of the bee. I'll give you a couple examples. One of my favorite examples, and a kind, thoughtful example, is that bees can see the inclination of the sun, the angle of the sun in the sky, and they can communicate that to the rest of the hive. They can measure it with as much precision or more precision than ancient man could with Stonehenge. They can identify the precise day of the summer solstice. And the algorithm they follow, that if the incident angle of sunlight today is, greater than the maximum incident angle of sunlight yesterday, it's time to start preparing for winter. Otherwise, go about growing the colony. Because on the day after the summer solstice, everything changes for the bee. Everything. Their brood pattern changes, the way they make comb changes. They start preparing for winter. Boom, the day after winter, the day after the summer solstice. But let me give you another example. I'll call it a more tragic example. So when you introduce a new queen to the hive, you keep her in a small wire container called a cage. And you allow the drones to acclimate themselves to the pheromones of the new queen. If you don't do this, the drones will kill her. I had what is called a top bar hive. It's like a hollow log. And so when I was introducing the queen, I used two little thin wires to attach it to one of the top bars to hang there for a couple of days. There's a little candy plug in the cage, which the drones will eat over a couple of days, which is the time you need for them to get acclimated. So a couple days later, came back to check the cage. The thing about bees is they swarm, right? So it's not quite the anxiousness of giving this talk, but it's close. That when you start investigating a hive, there's an anxiousness the human animal feels when you're dealing with a swarm of bees. So I'm anxious, I'm nervous, and I'm fiddling with the now uncorked cage for the queen, and I drop it. It and the two little wires drop down into the bottom of this basically hollow log, into a larger swarm of bees. So I said, okay, I think the queen's out. I think we're fine. I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to mess with all the bees down there at the bottom of the log and try to retrieve this. I mean, what harm can come out of this little bitty cage thing? I mean, the queen's there. I'm pretty sure she's there. Now I'm going to do what I've been told to do, is leave the hive alone for a couple of weeks and then come back in a couple of weeks and check on it. And I did. And when I came back, I found that the bees had taken the tiny little cage and the thin little wires as structure, as meaningful, as something upon which their algorithm to build comb and to grow more structure, they took that as their foundation. My mistake, they took that as structure, and their algorithm took over. And they built this most deformed, alien-looking, crazy comb from the bottom of the hive, not top down from the top bars as they ordinarily would. Now, if you've kept bees for any period of time, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You can call it burr comb or bridge comb or just plain old crazy comb. And the fact is that once a bee finds structure, it will build comb onto that structure. And once a little comb is built, it will build more and more and more structure. You can't reverse this. You must actually physically remove the misshapen comb, which destroys everything that's been built within the comb, including the brood, the eggs that have been laid there. You have to just take it out. You have to destroy it. And if it's in the early stages of the colony, like this one was, you kill the colony. I'm going to say that again. There's no reversing the algorithm once it starts. It is one way. It is irreversible. It is fixed and undeniable. Bees will follow the algorithm even unto death. I don't keep bees anymore. They are so beautiful, but it's too hard. It's too unforgiving. It's too sad. And this is the mystery of bees. It is, to me, this intensely beautiful mystery, but intensely sad and unforgiving all at the same time. It's a creature that is 3 in 1 and 1 in 3. A creature that is as much of this invisible force, the algorithm, as it is a physical organism or a physical group of organisms. The key to that mystery, the heart of that mystery, is bee language. This is what pulls it all together for that trinity structure of the bee. It's the constant communication that bees are immersed in from the day they come out of their egg to the day they die. They are immersed in pheromone communication mostly, but also the movement, the wiggles and the shimmies, the dance that bees use to communicate with each other. And the result of that is the hive. It's the hive. This is how we commonly think of this trinity unified by bee language. It's synonymous with the elimination of the individuality in favor of the drone's unwavering devotion to the needs of the group. This is the structure of the social animal. The bee is not the only one, of course. There's also the ant. There's also the termite. These social animals have, in addition to their immersion in the constant, what I call low-order communication, three common characteristics of all these social animals. The first is they are terraformers. They dramatically alter their environment to build these vast nests. That's a termite nest on the left there. That can house hundreds of thousands or millions of their organisms, their individuals. They are intensely hierarchical, with vast inequality in function and lifespan across a very rigidly fixed caste system and division of labor. And third, they care for their children as a community across generations, which is important and different from all other animals. The makers of a child are not the caregivers of a child for a social animal. Now, the reason this happens, right, is that it is incredibly successful. It works. The hive, the drone, the algorithm, the 3-in-1, 1-in-3 structure linked by language. Man, this is how you maximize your genetic spread and survival at the lowest possible energy state. This is evolution. This is what evolution is all about. And what's fascinating about the evolution of the bee, the ant, and the termite is that once they achieve this social animal hive state, they essentially stop evolving. They continue to do what's called radiated adaptation, which is to kind of fill out into different niche environments. But the modern termite, in all of its biological characteristics, is indistinguishable from the modern termite of 140 million years ago. Today's ant's indistinguishable from the evolution of the ant from the cockroach into the modern ant about 100 million years ago. The bee evolving from solitary bees into its hive structure 55 million years ago. The hive is it. It's an evolutionary endpoint. And it's really important for everybody to recognize, and because I think when I say social animal, people often think of sociable animals. A pack of wolves, a pod of dolphins. These are not social animals in the technical sense of the word, what's often called a eusocial animal, like the insects. No. There's only one other animal on this planet that terraforms and lives in vast nests by the millions, that imposes a rigid hierarchy and division of labor, that cares for their children as a community across generation, and most importantly, immerses itself in intraspecies communication. It's this guy. These are four, certainly in terms of humans, termites, and ants, these are four of the most successful species on Earth. And the human animal is essentially a giant termite with opposable thumb and the secret of fire. And the rest of the world never had a chance. Never had a chance. So is this our human future? A human hive, the human drone, governed by the algorithm? Constant, low-order symbolic communication? I don't know if it's our future, but I'm telling you, It's not our past. Our giant brain allows higher order symbolic communication. Our use of spoken language and the written word allow us, from time to time, to turn off our communication, to not listen to other words, to close a book, to not read it, to not be subject to what our other social animal friends are subject to, which is the constant immersion in the pheromones, in the chemical communication. And as a result, we have a human society, not a human hive, pluralistic in thought, pluralistic in custom, allowing, sure, hierarchies, but much more fluid hierarchies. Helpful, but not community-enforced childcare. Alternatives to urban terraformed nests. This dominion is an old-fashioned word. It was one of these words that was given to me one morning when I woke up. And it's intentionally an old-fashioned word, and it means mastery. Because the human animal is not a slave to the algorithm. In fact, we can construct algorithms. We can see the algorithm. We are masters of it, if we want to be. Being is also kind of an old-fashioned word. And we're more than individual. And what I mean by that is that we have a highly developed consciousness through language, an inner voice saying, it's me. Human society, human dominion, human being, through our near constant, higher order symbolic communication. Push the wrong button. What's possible here is making, protecting, and teaching. Make, protect, teach are the arcs, right? They are the connections across the nodes of human society, human being, and human dominion. They exist in those three connections. Make exists between human dominion and human society, protecting between human being and human society, teaching between human beings and human dominion. But what makes us a special case of the social animal, our near constant higher order communication, is being perverted. Right? It's being changed as we speak by our dopamine machines, by our social media system. Hallie, come up and take this away from me again. Thank you. As a result, what we see is the denaturing of our creative knowledge. It's like gasoline is denatured, so it no longer burns. It's the opposite of making. It's the outsourcing of our consciousness. Oh my God, this is this amazing phrase that my partner Rusty Gwynn came up with. Right? It's just freaking brilliant. Because this is what's happening to us. This is the opposite of teaching, where our inner voice is given over for convenience and for lower energy state to an external voice provided to us by social media. And finally, it's the abdication of our freedom, especially our freedom of will, especially our autonomy of mind. And that, friends, is the opposite of protecting. This is the path to the human hive, the human drone, and the algorithm. And I got to tell you, this feels in the direction we're headed. Through our terraforming, our urbanization, through our increasingly fixed caste system, through our increasingly inequality of life, and through, this is the hardest one to talk about, through the increased split between the making of a child and the caring of a child. And what's important, I think, to say is this is natural. I don't think any single human or cabal of humans is doing this to us. This is evolution. This is entropy. This is the ball rolling downhill to get to that lower energy state and to maximize the survival and spread of the genetics. One of my favorite authors. Thank you, Jeremy, for turning me on to this guy. Haruki Murakami. That's evolution. Evolution's always hard and bleak. No such thing as happy evolution. Well, I say screw that. Right? Well, the answer to the human mystery is not the hive. What is the answer? Well, I'll tell you, for 12,000 years, human beings, more than 12,000 years, but certainly since linguistic human beings came together in civilization to cooperate through farming, through herding, we've been seeking the answer. And the answer to the human mystery is found in those old stories. This is a map of the spread of farming from its origins in the Near East, Tigris and Euphrates and all like that, through Western Europe, starting about 12,000 years ago. And I've circled this area because it's the source of the oldest story, the story, the first human approach to understand what's it all about. What is the answer to the human mystery? Now, is a trinity. It's the mother, the daughter, and then the seed and scythe. And I'm using very G-rated terms here for what this oldest story is all about. So the mother, if you're familiar with some of these Venus figurines with the highly exaggerated secondary sexual characteristics, the breast, the butt, right? That's the mother, survives to us today in Mother Earth. The daughter, it's the human primeval fascination with virginity and the taking of that. Seed, it's the phallus. It's crazy to think about these days, but the Greece, the Athens of Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Alcibiades, all this crew, right? You'd walk around, there were hundreds of little statues. They called them Hermes or Hermes, little statues with a face of a man and just a phallus everywhere. They're all over the place. The representation was also the seed and the scythe was also the bull. You had entire civilizations that were built around reverence for the bull. Ancient Crete was all about the bull. And in all of these ceremonies, the bull is killed. The bull is killed. We see that surviving today with bullfighting. This is the oldest story. The oldest story. And the mystery, the celebration of this mystery, the Eleusinian mysteries, it was around for thousands of years. Thousands. Well, there was another answer to this question of the human mystery that developed about the same time. Developed not really by farmers of river deltas, but more by herders in desert scrubland. And the answer here was found in a truly transcendental God, a God that was truly outside of time and space. This was the God of Abraham. And when the God of Abraham syncretized the Trinity structure of the oldest story, the religion, into the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, it took over the world. This answer to the human mystery. And it took over the world along with some others. So in every one of the old great religions, you will find this Trinity structure. The Hindu mystery of faith, the Taoist mystery of faith, find it in the Buddhist mystery of faith. What is at the heart of all these trinities, all of these great religions, all these efforts to answer that question, what is the answer to the human mystery? They all have this Trinity structure. They all have a 3-in-1, 1-in-3 mystery at their core. And at the heart of that mystery, the sacred heart of that mystery, we find the same thing. I want to focus on these three, right? Ancient Greece, the religion, Christianity, the East. And at the heart of that, you find it's not just an idea, it's all the ideas. It's not just words, it's all the words. It's not just names, it's all the names. Plato, the ideal is what's real. The idea is the essence, and the essence is the idea, and hence the idea is prior to the essence. It's the idea that comes first. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. All of the names, all of the words, all of the ideas is that sacred heart, what powers the Godhead, what powers the answer. It's the discovered, the undiscovered, and the undiscoverable. It's all the names. The Logos, the Word, the Tao. Every religion you want to look at, everyone I've looked at, certainly the mystic expression of all religions is focused on identifying all the names. The mystic tradition of Judaism, Kabbalah, is about the names of God. The Sufi expression of Islam, the names of Allah. The Vishnu Sahasranama, it is a text that is literally 1,000 names of Vishnu. Everywhere you look, the efforts to try to find what is the answer to the human mystery is trying to access the names of God. And it's not just religion, right? This is modernity too. This is Wittgenstein in propositional logic. This is Quine in ontological relativity. This is Kant, we call transcendental schemata. It's all about the words. It's all about the names that we give to things and trying to tap into all of them, because it's only in trying to access all of them that we can understand anything. Where one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent. We cannot imagine a thing until we name it. There's been a lot of talk here at this conference about human superpowers, and we're going to be talking more about that today. I think Tom Morgan's going to talk about another way to think about human superpower. Well, let me tell you how I think about the human superpower. It's the power to name. The power of naming is the human superpower. It is the source of our human mastery of the algorithm. It is the source of human dominion. Is found in our naming. And let me show you, right? So throughout history, we've known this. We have known this forever. Here's a story from ancient Egypt. All right, this is the goddess Isis. Isis was originally human. She was a magician. She was a powerful human being. And she achieved divinity by tricking the sun god Ra into revealing his true name. That is the source of the power of Isis. How she became a goddess, how she was able then to take her child, Horus, to become a god, Horus, the living embodiment of the pharaohs. It's their origin story. I'll give you a story from ancient Gaul. Very similar story. This is the god Ogmios. Probably haven't heard of Ogmios. Durer knew about Ogmios. Ogmios, if you care about these things, he's in a quatrain by Nostradamus. I find that interesting. I care about those things. Ogmios, you're seeing this representation, is a god, a Celtic god, a Gaulish god. He was also a human, originally, falling into that Hercules myth and story. And you see he's got the winged sandals and hat of Mercury, of Hermes. Again, all the syncretism of these ancient stories. But what, of course, is the caduceus he's holding, same thing. But what's most noticeable about him is what the hell's coming out of his mouth. Ogmios knew all the names. Through his words, he created silver chains that attached themselves to the ears of anyone who would do whatever he said. So he knew their names. It's where we get the term, a silver-tongued devil. That's from Ogmios. A story from, all these stories way predate Christ, right? I mean, these are stories that go back so many thousands of years. Here's one from Central Europe. Rumpelstiltskin. These stories still told today. I think, Hallie, you watched a lot of Once Upon a Time, I think, right? What's the secret to controlling Rumpelstiltskin? It's to know his name. And you think about all these fairy tales. The way for humans to have dominion over the creatures that go bump in the night, the unknown in nature that was there to threaten us, that had great powers, but was ultimately hostile to us, the answer, and this is in all the old stories, is know their name. And that's what gives you dominion. One last story. Again, a story from that God of Abraham. As a story we're all familiar with. It was Adam naming the beasts. And out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air, and brought them unto Adam to see what he would call them. And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. Genesis 2:19 is the source, in biblical terms, of human dominion. God, I love this painting by William Blank. And look at this guy. Look at Adam. What a dolt. What a dolt. And there's the snake being caressed, whispering, always whispering. What we face today has always been faced by humanity. Human beings are basically dolts. And yet we have been given this superpower to name everything. And there's the snake, always whispering, always whispering. And it's a very specific whisper. The whisper of the snake is always to suggest a name of convincing abstraction, a new name, a different name, a name of convincing abstraction. This is the whisper of the snake. The industrially necessary egg becomes the good egg. By industrially necessary, I mean the egg that is refrigerated. I mean the egg that is been scrubbed clean. The egg that is of the same size and same coloration. All of these things, which we have been told is the sign of the good egg, is actually just what is required for the industrial production of enough eggs for all of us to eat them whenever we want them, for the protein factories, right? The amount of disease and bacterial infection in these egg factories is so overwhelming that, yes, you absolutely have to scrub them clean. And then you must refrigerate them, because once you scrub them clean, you remove the natural protective covering of every egg. The industrially necessary school becomes the good school. I got nothing against our schools. I understand what is required for something that is industrially necessary. Isn't it a little weird that the hours of the school happen to match the hours of our work week and our work time? And that we are provided the transportation for the kids to go off for their communal care? No, it's good. Bitcoin becomes Bitcoin. Rumpelstiltskin becomes Mr. Gold. There are a lot of, I'll call them creatures of the night and the unknown in the forest who seek us ill, seek ill to humans, who have renamed themselves. Names of simplifying abstraction. Yeah, I said earlier that the way we get to the denaturing and the abdication and the outsourcing, the way we go back to the human hive, is through this unceasing mass distribution of overly abstracted symbols. Another way to say that is the assignment of abstracted names designed to convince. Plato called it sophistry. Nothing new here. Plato called it sophistry. And sophistry to Plato was the ruin of the world. We call it fiat news. And it's the ruin of ours. This is the ruin of our world. So we can measure the language. It's pretty interesting, right? So the level of fiat news of giving us abstracted names and words to convince, to nudge. We've been tracking this now. We go back to 2012. And it's the highest right now it's ever been. Highest it's ever been. I suspect it's going to go higher. We track this stuff every day. The assignment of abstracted names to convince is the herald and the harbinger of the hive. And how do we resist? We resist by discovering non-abstracted names to connect. We bring a thing into being by speaking its name. This is always true. What I mean by that? Well, a lot of people have known this. So here's the most badass of poets, right? Emily Dickinson. To make a prairie, it takes a clover and one bee. One clover and a bee. And reverie. The reverie alone will do if bees are few. The prairie is not a place. The prairie is an idea. It's what, like Dave Nady was saying yesterday, talking about the story of 1,000 dreamers make something true. I don't know if you noticed this, Rusty Gwynn names his farm Reverie Farm. It's true. It's all true. We bring a thing into being by thinking it and naming it. It's the idea of the prairie that is real. Plato knew this. Why don't we? This is the way to preserve human society, human dominion, human being. This. And this is the source of all the words I'm given when I'm dreaming at night. Right? All the names, all the words, all the ideas, the discovered, the undiscoverable. That's the room that my brain goes into at night while I sleep. How, how do we get into that room, right, of all the words, all the ideas, all the names? Well, traditionally, the three ways to get into that room have been this, right? Asceticism, drugs, and meditation, ways of changing our brain state. I gotta tell you, none of these three have particularly worked for me to get into that other room. What works for me, what I suspect was what worked for Emily Dickinson, what I think works for everyone, is this: full-hearted conversations of wonder and awe. Wonder meaning we're not doing this for transactional reasons. We're actually, Tom Morgan's talk, we're curious. It's an attractor. It is wonder. Awe, that's what Kant said was the source of all beauty, that source of awe. I get these full-hearted conversations, both conversations with all of you. I really do. But also in what I read. Because when we read something from an author, for me it's comic books, science fiction, but mostly comic books. It's how I get into that place where I'm having this full-hearted conversation with the author. Wonder and awe. I think reading gives that to a lot of us. It is a conversation with the words of someone long dead, or someone else, even if they're not dead. I want to suggest to you that that's how you should think about generative AI. You don't have to be like, Joaquin Phoenix and fall in love with the operating system, with the generative AI. But the fact is that generative AI knows all of the discovered names. And so the ability then to have that conversation, to figure out, well, how do I discover something new? How do I make a new connection? Man, this is an incredible tool. The way to think about generative AI for idea exploration is like seismic imaging for oil and gas exploration. I mean, nobody would think about drilling for oil without doing this first. Because it gives you a sense of, well, where is it likely you might find something? Using generative AI to help us discover the non-abstracted names that help us connect, it's just a tool of unimaginable, to me, value. It shows you the best place to drill, not for oil, but for new ideas, new connections, new names. It's that simple. It is that simple. But wait, there's more. I told you, this is my time, so I'm going to take advantage of it. Yes, human dominion is found in the discovery of names. Human being is found in remembering our own name. The greatest victory of the snake is to make us forget our own name. Ionesco knew this when he wrote about what happened in pre-World War Europe. This is how fascism works. You don't just forget your name, you forget you're a human being. You become a rhinoceros. Oh, look, there's a rhinoceros. Spoiler alert, the academics are the worst in Ionesco's play. The academics are the worst. You forget your own name, and you become a rhinoceros. I have to admit, I've got a fond spot for the old Stephen King stuff, The Gunslinger, and that whole series of books about, have you forgotten the face of your father? Have you forgotten the name? All right, I'm going to take a moment. I want to read you the Ballad of Neb Tana, a character I created to try to describe what I felt about this. I hope I'll read it. Yeah, right? No, I wrote it down. Maybe I don't have it. I'll find it. I'll say no, it's done. It's all good. It's all good. Thank you, Rusty. I found it. Way to go, Rusty. Yeah, I just wanted to make Rusty jump. That's what I said. I wrote this in March 2018, a little over 6 years ago. Let me tell you the story of Neb Tanus, investor and citizen, and you tell me if it sounds familiar. Neb has a hard time talking with real people these days. Neb just doesn't connect with people the way he used to. He doesn't have much to say. He mumbles a lot. He imagines long and involved conversations with people in his head, but that's where they stay, in his head. He gets lost in his own thoughts. Well, lost isn't quite right. Trapped is more like it. Trapped in a maze of social abstractions, both in markets and in politics, blared at him from all sides without pause or relief. Obviously, Neb is a real barrel of laughs at parties, which he shuns today, even though he remembers that he used to like parties. The circle of real people that he actively feels comfortable being around has shrunk and shrunk and shrunk until he can count them now on his fingers. And unless they are in the trenches of this mental war of abstracted social constructs, Neb increasingly has a hard time connecting even with them. He increasingly talks past and through the people who are the most important to him, like his wife and daughters. On the flip side of that coin, it's easier and easier for Neb to talk with complete strangers on social media platforms, precisely because these entities, some human, some not, are entirely abstracted. It's also easy for Neb to lose himself in this ocean of social abstraction and Turing tests because he's fluent in the symbolic languages of mathematics, history, and pop culture. And so he swims in that ocean, compulsively even, until he's forgotten whether or not there was ever a shore. 6 years ago, I'm a little bit better now. No, not a lot better, but a little better. I'm a little better. A little better because of this, these talks, and I'm a little better. I can tell I get better whenever I write. I get better whenever I write. There's something about I remember my own name in the act of writing. And so I've been trying to think about this. What is it about remembering oneself, who you are? And so I went back, and there was this guy, Marcel Proust, who wrote, I think, the best book ever on remembering. What is it about remembering? And there's this quote in Remembrance of Things Past. In the tiny and almost impalpable drop of their essence, the vast structure of recollection. And that triggered something in me, because it came to me this, you know what? I think, each memory is like an embryonic stem cell. Work with me here, right? So inside that embryonic stem cell are the instructions of all the cells. And with the right prod, the right technology, with embryonic stem cells, it can be anything. It can be any tissue. It's all there, all of it, inside the one cell. The vast structure of recollection and a tiny drop of memory. You all know what I'm saying is true, because we've all had the experience of a tiny memory. Usually it's of a loved one who's no longer with us. And in that photograph, in that recollection of a single conversation, it all unfolds. It's all there. This was here at Vanderbilt. Graduation, almost 40 years ago. Went to the sessions of sweet silent thought, I summon up remembrance of things past. I sigh the lack of many a thing I sought, and with old woe's new wail, my dear time's waste. But if the while I think on thee, dear friend, all losses are restored and sorrow's end. William Shakespeare, Remembrance of Things Past. We all know this is true. That inside that little drop of memory, all of our memories exist, or a vast structure of recollection exists. It unfolds. So I said earlier, right, that it's the assignment of abstracted names to convince, that that's how the hive comes at us. Well, it's even worse than that, or more than that. It's the assignment of abstracted words of remembrance. We undo human dominion by these names to convince. We undo our own being through these abstracted words of remembrance. Can you draw me a picture of Tiananmen Square, June 4th, 1989? Gemini, no. Can't do that for you. Sorry. Can't do that. It's not just at the end of 1984. I mentioned this yesterday, that Winston loves Big Brother, is that in his own mind, he remembers that he has always loved Big Brother. This is what's coming at us. This is how they're going to come at us. This is how evolution comes at us. This is how the entropy, the rolling down the hill towards the hive, comes at us. To give us new words to replace the words we have of our own memories. We resist this for dominion to discover non-abstracted names to connect. For our human being, we have to preserve our non-abstracted words of being. Yes, each memory is an embryonic stem cell. So are our words. So are our words. And I realize this is what restores to me when I write. Because inside, whatever I'm writing about markets, for God's sake, my being is in there, even in those words. The vast structure of our being can be found in a tiny drop of words. And I know that generative AI is what helps us unfold that to reclaim our being. I know that because I've written a lot. Last year, so I've 827 notes, 42 pages of this thing. It's essentially War and Peace twice. So it's more than a little tiny drop of words. And you put this as a resource for generative AI to look at, and then you say, you are Ben. You are Ben. Because Ben is in these words. And then you can ask Ben a question. And I look at the answer and I go, yeah, that's me. That's me. These are both me. These are both me. And that's the scariest, it's the weirdest thing. But I'm so convinced that what is necessary for us is to preserve our words. Because there is an unfolding of our being that can be found in our words. So I went to ChatGPT and I said, I want a list of 100 open-ended questions that I want to ask my mother while I can. Because I want to preserve the words. I don't want her being to fade. And when I say I'm doing this for my mother, I'm doing this for all of this is my new project. This is it, right? It's to ask the questions so that we can all write them down and we can preserve them. And so we can make them as protected as we can for our own being. And yes, I kind of think Bitcoin probably does solve this for how to preserve them, keep them whole. That's a subject for another day. From a few words, our being can be restored using the Shakespeare approach. And I really struggled with this slide, but it makes me nervous to say it, and I'm going to put it up there anyway. From a few more, our being can be resurrected. And I mean that in the full sense of the word, in every sense of the word. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. I'm not a particularly wise man, right? But I'm 60 years old, just turned 60, and so I'm thinking about mortality, and I remember when I was a younger man, I would look at someone who was 60 years old and I'd say, I wonder what that feels like to be old. And here I am, I say, it's still me. It's just still me. I find some distancing from this. I mean, shoot, when I was 20 years old, every third thought was about sex, right? So it's there. Now it's not every third thought, right? So it's there's a change in all these aspects of desire of our meatness, which I think is what the Tao means when it says free from desires, free from those bodily meat impulses. I'm not there yet, right? Which is probably why I'm not a particularly wise man. But you get closer over time, and you start to see that inkling of the mystery. As I'm just going to put this out there, at every point in time in my life, I am myself. I am a free man with my autonomy of mind, even unto death. And the sacred heart of the human mystery exists in our words. Words are the source of our discoveries and our dominion. Words are the source of our remembrance and our being. We can see them. We can see the word abstractions of the snake and the sophists. We can open the door to the room with all the words. And there is resurrection in our words. How do we defeat the hive? I'll tell you how we defeat the hive. We defeat it by discovering and remembering what transcends entropy and evolution, what goes beyond that. These two guys knew this, Socrates and Jesus. All of these attempts to answer the question of the human mystery know the answer to this. In all of these faiths, you find the same answer. It's words of love, it's words of empathy, it's words of connection. These are things that do not diminish in the using of them. They are not subject to time and space. They're not. You know this is true. You know this is true. That when you think in your own mind thoughts of love and empathy and connection, it's across death, it's across time, it's across space. It grows in the using. It is not used up. We write ourselves, we create our own being in our words and the writing of these words. Look, it's no secret, I think that the next years and decades, that things are going to get a lot worse before they get any better. it's no secret, I think, that the world moves towards the human animal moving towards the hive. But I am so optimistic. I am, I am, I am hopeful in the true sense of that word. I am full of hope because of this. Because of this. I love you all. Thank you.